Hello, Gamecock fans. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. Welcome to Ball Don't Lie, SGTV's premier live sports show.
JP and I will be giving you our weekly insight every Friday.
This week on the show, we're formally covering the Carolina Hurricanes for the very first time.
And later, we'll be talking all about this weekend in men's and women's hoops.
Be sure to stick around until the end for head-to-head college basketball pick'ems.
And without further ado, welcome to Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome to the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry.
This is the one where there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer.
I'm always the get-back game guy.
There's so many teams with so many good wins.
Because, they love seeing Clemson lose no matter what.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that love seeing Clemson lose.
Yeah,
Return of the King released 20 years ago today. There you go. And for that reason, give me the Noles.
I like being right more than I like being happy.
I think the committee made the right choice.
Florida State did not lose a football game. It's football. This is college football. How can you not be romantic about baseball? It's just such a tremendous sport.
It's time. Is it time?
I think it's time.
This is Ball Don't Lie.
Your Carolina Hurricanes have been on a tear after a tough start to the season. Let's take a look at their season so far as they head into the NHL All-Star break. JP, the Canes is kind of a tale of two halves, isn't it?
Absolutely. It started off a little bit how you expected. The Hurricanes came into the season as the odds-on favorite to win the Stanley Cup, and they played like it. And then Freddie Andersen leaves the team with blood clotting issues, and everything fell apart. It culminated in a 4-game losing skid that had Carolina 14-12-1 on December 12th, 4th in division, and 11th in the Eastern Conference. But ever since, after inserting Pyotr Kochetkov into the starting goalie crease, man, Carolina's just been on fire, getting 32 out of 42 available points, rocketing all the way back up to second in the division, 2 points behind the New York Rangers, and fourth in the East behind, teams like the Boston Bruins, who are amongst the best in hockey. And Freddie Andersen, who was out and seemingly indefinitely, returned to the ice the other day. We'll see how he can kind of attempt to make his comeback, and as you can see there, his career in Carolina so far, he's been one of the best goalies in all of hockey.
Absolutely, and a lot of the Hurricanes' success, I feel like you got to credit it to Sebastian Aho, the lone all-star, him as well as Svechnikov coming back from injury, just carrying the offensive load for the team.
Absolutely, and special teams make special players, and special players make special plays.
They sure do.
For the longest time, Carolina's penalty kill was amongst the best in the NHL. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the power play. A spot of much discussion in the offseason for Carolina. They had plenty of opportunities in the Eastern Conference Final to beat the Florida Panthers on the power play. They weren't able to take advantage of it. They ended last season 20th in the NHL in power play percentage. And
where are they now?
Second, following an unbelievable stretch. Starting December 1st, they are at a blistering 35% on the power play and a 96.2% on the penalty kill. And behind that, Kochetkov and the always great defense of guys like Jacob Slavin, Brent Burns, Brett Pesce. Martin Necas remains one of the fastest skaters in the NHL. And, the team hits into another gear when Andrei Svechnikov is back. His 11 goals and 19 assists have him at 30 points in just 29 games played after he came back from tearing his ACL, something I can commiserate with. But, it's a team that once they get going, the Rod Brindamore style, it's grinded out. Teams, they just don't want to play them. They quit. And if they can really get Andersen back, Kochetkov returning from the concussion he suffered a couple weeks ago, and this is a team that seems, while other signs are pointing down for teams in the Metro, like the New Jersey Devils, the New York Rangers, all struggling, the Washington Capitals, it's Carolina really with an opportunity to win their 4th straight division crown and make up the playoffs for an unprecedented 6th time in a row.
And what I love about this team, and kind of what you touched on earlier, is the power play percentages. They ranked 20th last year, but that's what they struggled with in the playoff series that got them eliminated. And they said, hey, let's get in the lab, let's work on this. They're all the way up into second. And it's so valuable come playoff time to be able to convert on power plays. And their kill, as you mentioned, since December, a 92.6% is just absurd. That's 9 out of 10 kills. You're completing.
Carolina has
crazy.
scored more shorthanded goals than most teams have scored power play goals so far this season, and it's truly a weapon. And it speaks a lot to the athleticism and the talent that Don Waddell and Rod Brindamore have cultivated in Raleigh, and the buy-in from guys, even guys who are struggling on the season like Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who have had some tremendous performances, and it's the stalwart captain of it all, Jordan Stahl, who's been in Carolina since like the franchise.
The dawn of man.
Yeah. But they brought him back, and it's been an awesome season so far for Carolina, and hockey's just great. You can catch us later tonight calling the cock hockey game versus Georgia.
Maybe some new jerseys coming in tonight. I mean, it could be a bit of a special one.
And so, we're big hockey guys, and, kind of my goal is to infect the rest of our viewership with the hockey fever. Once it gets to playoff time, there's nothing like it. But, peeling it back to more kind of our forte, back on campus, the South Carolina Gamecocks came through with yet another big-time upset in men's basketball, this time on the road against the Tennessee Volunteers, a man in recent years. Carolina has kind of gotten into the habit of raining on the Volunteer parade, haven't they, Spencer?
That's right. Something about dropping 63 on the Volunteers, but it's Talon Tuesday, wasn't it? For the second week in a row, 18 points from Mr. Cooper, 5 rebounds, leading the team once again. 4 for 5 from 3. He's just so efficient, and this was a real grinded-out game. I wouldn't consider it nearly the prettiest game I've ever seen. It was quite ugly, in fact, especially from the team in orange. They looked god-awful. But outside of Dalton Connect with 31 and 7 on almost 50% from the field.
His one-legged runner 3 to make it a 2-point game with like
that
12
gave me a
seconds
heart
left.
attack.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
These guys just want to die. They're like Michael Myers. You think he's dead, and then he just rises up all emotionless. It's crazy.
Yeah, but Miles Stute, coming back from that shoulder injury, one of his first games back, a super crucial performance from him. He's 4 for 4 from the line, and then he went 3 for 4 from 3 for his 13 points. And kind of the thing that the South Carolina team brings to the table is it's really not a one-trick pony. Whereas Tennessee, you see how heavily they had to rely on Dalton Connect just to stay in the game. South Carolina had 16 points from B.J. Mack, 13 from Stute, 18 from Cooper. It's a balanced attack, but the team not only does it on the offensive end, but the defensive end as well.
Absolutely, and like you said, it's not just one guy. And Jacoby Wright can hit a timely 3. Zachary Davis, Igusuk from Finland. We've talked about a lot of Finland players already today with Sebastian Aho and Jesperi Kotkaniemi and now Igusuk. But the bench has just been phenomenal for the Gamecocks. The freshman, Colin Murray Boyles, but his backup, Josh Gray, the senior, coming off the bench, he doesn't let not starting get to him mentally, and he brings his A game every time, and he's banging down low. B.J. Mack, he doesn't have it when he's shooting jump shots, so he starts working it down low, gets to the line, 7 of 8 from the free throw line.
Or kicking it out to teammates as well. That's a big thing they love to do.
South Carolina only made, 8 or 9 field goals in the entire second half, and 6 of them were threes. 2 of them were by B.J. Mack down low, one getting to the rim and the other a dunk. And so when you suck the defense in like that and you have so many threats out wide and you play at the pace that South Carolina does, watching South Carolina men's basketball, it's kind of like watching a well-run service academy option team because you're only going to have so many possessions. And if you can't start getting stops and scoring like we saw with Tennessee, even when they'd stop South Carolina wouldn't allow them to score, or Tennessee would turn the ball over, and you just felt the possessions ticking away as South Carolina ran down the shot clock. And that's something that's pretty invaluable come tournament time, shortening the game, limiting possessions, because when you do that and you have the ability to make threes like we've seen South Carolina do, and the ability to score down low with Murray Boyles, Gray, and Mack, and even Stephen Clark at times, it's all the makings of a team that can really pull some big upsets in March. And at some point, it stops being an upset, when the Gamecocks take down a big team. They were just outside looking at the top 25, and if they can take care of business on Saturday in Athens and get a little revenge, we could see the Gamecocks really a place in the AP poll they haven't been since 1997.
And Georgia's probably their worst loss on the season, I would say, not by the most points, but the worst team they've lost to. They lost by 5 at home, 74-69.
And a horribly officiated game. Just got to get that out there. What in the world was that?
Hey, sometimes you gotta speak on it. But this is a nice revenge game, and I think handling the Bulldogs will kind of cement their case. After this one, how can you not rank this team? I mean, they've beaten 2 top 10 teams in a week. What are they, 18-3 now, 19-3? It's ridiculous.
6-2 in the SEC. Which
7-2 in quad one games.
As
quad
much
one
as,
and two.
As much as I kind of, I'm kind of skeptical on the SEC as a tournament performing kind of machine. When you're second in a conference that has Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and speaking of teams that aren't being valued as well, Ole Miss, also 18-3. They come to South Carolina on Tuesday to Colonial Life Arena in a matchup of two teams that were picked to finish near last in the SEC. And also someone's picked to finish near last, Georgia. Bulldogs under Mike White have had a great year, but they let it get away from them against Alabama the other night. They had a
17-point lead.
Yeah,
bad.
Alabama scored 2 points in the first 10 minutes of basketball, and then the next 30 they scored 83. That Alabama team, they have a round of 64 floor and a Final Four ceiling because it really just depends on when they can flip the switch offensively.
And Mark Sears for Bama is one of the best guards in the country. His jump shot, it's beautiful, isn't it? But while South Carolina men's team, they remain unranked. The Lady Gamecocks, they've been number one all year. They've continued their dominance with a 20-game win streak to start the season. And I feel like it's just a broken record when we talk about this team because just look at their resume. 5 ranked wins. They defeated Auburn 76-54 last night in Alabama while only leading by 5 at the half.
Yeah, and it's kind of been a little bit of that where South Carolina, they're either losing or it's close at halftime. People are like, oh my God, this is the time that the Gamecocks are going to lose, and they just turn it on.
It's never the time.
No, never. Plus 702-point differential. And it's Raven Johnson has really stepped up her game. As you can see, they're 10-6-5 with 2 steals on the road against Auburn. And it's the ranked wins, really. Maryland, a very good team. Notre Dame, a team that just went on the road and hammered UConn on Saturday. North Carolina took it to NC State and Raleigh, came up just short. Utah, very good team. And LSU is always going to be there. But it's all building up, I think, to the next big game in a couple weeks against UConn. We'll see that. And it's something about women's basketball that men's basketball has kind of gotten away with, and I miss it a lot, is big-time non-conference games in February and January. We used to see Villanova and Virginia play, and now it's almost strictly just a women's thing, and all power to them. It makes for great matchups. It makes for big-time television productions. I think over 1 million people watched the Notre Dame-UConn game on Fox with Gus Johnson on the call.
Yeah.
Hannah Hidalgo did a great job in that game. And,
one of the best freshmen in the country, for sure.
It's insane. But South Carolina has a great freshman as well.
They do. Malaysia Fulwiley's been kind of lighting it up for them, just an electric ball handler. But also for this team, as you mentioned, the ranked kind of opposition non-conference games later in the season, it makes not only for like a great game, hey, it's great business. Let me tell you, that game at Colonial Life is sold out. I bought 2 tickets for my parents for Christmas. It wasn't cheap, that's all I'll say. But it's going to be a really great game. And the Gamecocks, JP, you know how many home wins they have consecutive?
No, I don't.
51. 51 straight home wins is pretty insane. And I don't believe I believe it was the 2020 season when NC State came here and knocked them off. But that was when no fans were in the building, so you can call that a home game, but it's not a home game unless you're packing the seats,
Yeah, and it's truly impressive. And, I'm young. My mom harped on me last week because apparently I yawned. I don't remember that. And so, of course, I just did it now. But, it's just
we're
a machine,
students.
man.
We're students. No sleep.
It's just a machine, and it's so much fun to watch. And we just feel really, I think, blessed to get this program. And not just, we got college baseball coming up in a couple weeks, but we're going to take a quick break. And after the break, we've got the scoop on some of college basketball's most anticipated upcoming matchups this weekend and what is sure to be a super Saturday.
The Clemson Tigers look to bounce back from a close loss to number 7 Duke, but the resurgent Virginia Cavaliers and ever-dominant UNC Tar Heels stand in their way.
It's really day in, day out in the ACC, isn't it? The nerds and the predictive metrics and the talking heads. Oh, the ACC could be a 2-bid conference. Bite me. Clemson, far and away one of the best non-conference performances of the season in college basketball. We saw them as high as 12th in the AP poll, and they've hit ACC play, and They struggled, but the ACC is a great conference. We see it every year in March. Of the high major conferences, they always get the least amount of teams, but they always have the most wins and the highest win percentage. And
and they make it the furthest. I mean,
exactly. Half the Final Four, I think last year was ACC teams, or so, half the Elite Eight. But Clemson is a team that's still in great position, even with the naysayers around the ACC. The Tigers are 14-6, 10th in the ACC at 4-5, and suffered a tough loss on the road at Duke with some really questionable officiating. God bless Joe Girard for trying to become a hero after that game. And,
a martyr.
They bounced back with a win over Louisville, a team that's much improved from the season ago. They're still quite horrid, but a team that only won 4 games and lost by 40 every game. That mantle has now
lost
been passed.
to what, Bellarmine?
Yeah, that mantle has now been passed to DePaul, who is just far and away maybe the worst high major team in all of conference basketball.
They have some cartoonish moments, especially from the game against Seton Hall.
Seton Hall was shooting a 1-and-1, and they get the rebound, just throw it out of bounds. Why did you do that? I don't know. It was 72-39. Their average of seed is a 6.33. They're the 3rd highest ACC team in the net, and the predictive metrics do like this team. A team that the predictive metrics have really come along on is the Virginia Cavaliers, who Clemson is going to take on this Saturday at home in what should be a great environment there at Littlejohn Coliseum. Virginia is 16-5, 7-3 on the season in the ACC on a 5-game winning streak. And when you play Tony Bennett, one thing is going to be sure. You're going to leave bruised and battered, and you're going to score maybe 50 points. And, they're still playing that style of basketball, and it's translated to wins as of late. Their game against NC State was one of the more unwatchable pieces of garbage ever, but it went to overtime. It was a pretty fun game, and they came away with the win. And then going on the road, taking on number 3 North Carolina, you saw the picture there. Clemson has won 1 time in men's basketball at the Dean Dome, and yours truly was in attendance with Maria Berry to just witness greatness with Amir Sims and Clemson getting the win there. It was a great game, and it took North Carolina's worst team ever in men's basketball for Clemson to get a victory up there at Chapel Hill. But, they're going to be trying to do it again, and P.J. Hall has always performed well against North Carolina, except the last time out. He struggled a little bit there. Against the Tar Heels, shooting just 4 for 13 with just 10 points, and really, he fouled a lot. And speaking of the Tar Heels, they suffered a tough loss this week in another great road game in the ACC, but the best rivalry in college basketball. The Duke Blue Devils and the North Carolina Tar Heels are going to face off for the 261st time this Saturday. And Spencer, I just have to give the rock to you, man.
Well, I'll be glad to take it. I've included some historic pictures of the rivalry here. We've got the throwback logos. 8 miles separate these two teams, JP. And let me tell you, I feel like the proximity is part of the reason why this is the best rivalry in sports.
I wouldn't go that far in sports, but it's far up there in basketball.
Growing up in North Carolina, for me, this is the best rivalry in North Carolina.
It's hard to argue.
It's an all-timer. No matter which way you look at it, from any perspective, you can respect that it's one of the best. UNC does lead the all-time record, 143-117. There were varying reports on how many games the two teams have, whenever you wanted to keep track of the games, but we went with, this is what we found, so you can believe it here, and that's fact and law. But UNC on the season, they're 3rd in the country. Did drop their first game of the year against Georgia Tech last Tuesday. A 1-point loss. RJ Davis definitely fouled on the last shot of the game. They didn't send him to the line.
That was another great ACC officiating performance. Good Lord.
But it's okay. They're still 1st in the ACC, and that was their first conference loss. It was, I want to say, one of their longest conference win streaks in recent memory. But RJ Davis kind of establishing himself as one of the front runners for National Player of the Year. It's looking like it's going to be him versus Zach Edey for that prestigious award, as he's putting up 21.5 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, 45% from the field, and he shoots over 40% from deep as well. But Duke is no slouch. This is kind of, both teams, I don't want to say have had off years, but this feels like the old UNC and Duke. They're back.
Like 2019, Zion, RJ, and Cam Reddish and all them going up against like the stacked North Carolina team that was very senior heavy. Armando Bacot has been at North Carolina since, color TV was invented. And it's going to come down to who's going to show up for either team, I think. I mean, these are two of the most prestigious colleges in all of college basketball. And, the players on both sides of this rivalry really speak for themselves and ready to write perhaps their final chapter in this rivalry. R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot. Bacot averaging 13 points, almost 10 rebounds a game, to go along with almost 4 blocks, I believe. Mm-hmm. And shooting over 53% from the field. Then you have Duke, Kyle Filipowski, Jeremy Roach, and his name just
Tyrese Proctor had an amazing game against Clemson.
That's who I'm thinking of. It's the stars versus the stars, the coaches versus the coaches have really changed over the last couple of years. But John Shire and Hubert Davis have done really great work so far in their early tenures there. And I'm just really excited for these games. It's a 6:30 tip-off on ESPN. It should get all the billing it deserves, even though ESPN's kind of slacked in college basketball coverage as of late. But, man, this is only the first of many matchups this Saturday, isn't it?
It sure is. I think these two coaches are going to be kind of the two coaches that lead this rivalry forward is what it seems like. But as you mentioned, the ACC, they're not the only ones with rivalry games. This Saturday, Wisconsin and Purdue will fight to see who's boss in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. This is going to be 1 p.m. on CBS. And, both teams have a common pitfall. The Nebraska Cornhuskers. Nebraska ball looking to make the tournament for the first time since 2014. Last night the Badgers blew a 19-point lead to Nebraska, and Purdue lost on the road against Nebraska, where the Cornhuskers made 14 three-pointers. Both teams have 2 losses in conference play, and both of them in the top 6 nationally, and 2 of the best offenses in college basketball as well.
Absolutely. It's hard not to talk about Purdue and talk about Zach Edey. Just an incredible. Look at his stat line. He's putting up 23.5 points per game, 11.5 boards, and 2.3 blocks. But I guess that's what you kind of expect from a guy not only that seasoned, but also that just tall. He's massive. He's unstoppable. It takes at least 2 to guard him, I would say. And, half the time that clearly doesn't work. He's still putting up 23.5 a game. But Purdue, it's yet again, they have this kind of really super team, but I feel like you're not going to be able to judge this team until March.
And it's like, there's teams out there where they are so good and they've been so good for a while that all that matters to the perception of their season is how they do in the postseason. And Purdue basketball is one of those now. And, they're going to be looking not just to feed it to Zach Edey, but they have a couple of players around him now. Fletcher Lawyer shooting great from 3, 42 of 97 on the season, over 11 points per game. And Braden Smith, 7.5 assists and 1.5 steals. But, where this game comes down to, I think, is Zach Edey down low against Wisconsin's ability to control the offensive glass. Wisconsin's going to be a lot like South Carolina, try and slow this game to a crawl.
Which makes sense because if you didn't know, Lamont Paris, a former Bo Ryan disciple. So, Wisconsin basketball, that's why when you mentioned earlier, you talked about how the SEC has kind of been known to be tournament frauds. South Carolina looks like a Big Ten team. So, take that for what it's worth. Purdue did lose in the round of 64 to Fairleigh Dickinson last year. But,
and so, outside of that, when Wisconsin does score, it comes with A.J. Storr, the St. John's Red Storm transfer. Thank God Rick Pitino ran him out of the Big East for some godforsaken reason. He's scoring over 16 points per game, I believe, and the percentage of shots he's taken, I have it here. He is accounting for 34.2% of all of Wisconsin's shots on the season, which is one of the highest usage rates in all of college basketball, but he's definitely worth it. And he's shooting 83.5% from the line as well. But Max Klesmit, the Wofford Terriers transfer, one of the best three-point shooters, one of the best just true shooters in college basketball as well. And, if Wisconsin can keep it together on the boards, slow the game down, play their pace of play, and get some big shots from Storr and Klesmit, they can pull this upset and bounce back from a tough loss the other night.
I think they sure can. I think it's going to be a great game, but we're not done yet, are we?
Absolutely not. The hits just keep on coming. There's games that we're not even going to be covering here. But in the Big 12, the 4th-ranked Houston Cougars and the number 8 Kansas Jayhawks are going to battle in the Big 12 for conference standing. And, it's the first time that these two have met as members of the Big 12, the first time they've met in general since the Maui tournament in 2001. And, man, we may be looking at the best team in college basketball right now, at least according to the ratings.
I mean, and you could have said that about either team. Of course, the ratings do favor Houston, but Kansas, I mean, clearly no slouch, 8th in the nation, but KenPom, Net, and the other ranking system all have Houston at first. They're an incredible team. I've been big on this team for years. I think Kelvin Sampson has a really nice system down there. Yet again, I think we're going to have to judge this team in March because they kind of been letting me down a little bit. I was always big on Houston in the tournaments, and they kind of have some lackluster performances, but I mean, this team could be different.
One time they did make the Final Four. They did not play a single-digit seed all the way there. They lucked out against like 12s and 10s and 13s, and it was just bizarre. And, you know, people were wondering, how is Houston going to transfer over to the Big 12 from the American? And people said the same thing about BYU and Cincinnati and all them. They proved to be pretty good. A team that made the move, Central Florida, one of Kansas's 2 losses on the season. It's going to be, which Kansas team are we getting? Kansas has some of the best wins in college basketball. They've beaten number 10 Kentucky, number 5 Tennessee, and number 1 UConn. UConn's only lost 2 times on the year, and one of them was against the Kansas Jayhawks. But they've also lost on the road against West Virginia and Central Florida, 2 of the worst teams in the Big 12 and in high major basketball. And, you know,
dropped onto Iowa State last week, hurt me in the pick'ems.
They got smoked by Iowa State. At least Iowa State is very good, but it's going to be in this arena, this hollowed ground of college basketball. You have your big 3, Kevin McCullough Jr., Hunter Dickinson, and KJ Adams Jr., going up against a media ratings darling in Houston.
Well, with a lot of star power on their side as well. I
Absolutely.
mean, LJ Cryer putting up 15 a game, Jamal Shed 12 and 6. I mean,
He's one of the best shot blockers in all college basketball, too. I think I have here. We have a lot of stats here, ladies and gentlemen. But
we love numbers.
yeah, he is the 5th-ranked player in KenPom with a 2.2 steals per game. The blocks I was thinking of was their 4-year Javier Francis, who averages over 1.6 blocks per game and is 12th in the country in block percentage. But you know, it's going to be that big 3 for Kansas against the defensive prowess of Houston. They have the best defense by adjusted defensive efficiency since 2019 Texas Tech, a team that went all the way to the title game, holding opponents to 28.3% from 3, 41% from 2-point range. They have an 18.9% block percentage, which is a crazy number if you think about it. Almost 20% of all of their opponents' shots are getting blocked when they play the Houston Cougars. And then sometimes they don't even have the ball long enough to shoot. A 15.7% steal percentage. Man, 2 heavyweights going at it in just, you know, kind of the mecca of college basketball. I can't wait, Spencer.
I mean, this weekend, it's incredible. And as we mentioned, we only highlighted 3 men's basketball games for you, but there's a huge slate on the women's side. There's even more men's basketball games. This is going to be a great weekend.
A game we're not even going to do pick'ems for, like, you know, UConn going to Madison Square Garden to take on St. John's and Rick Pitino. That's just insane, but I digress.
Hey, that's what we've got for you in, you know, specific game coverage, but we'll be right back after the break with this week's pick'ems to wrap up this episode of Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome back to BDL Pick'ems. After last week, Spencer is in the lead with a 5-3 record, while I sit at 500 with 4 wins and 4 losses.
The first time ever.
The season is a long, long draw. We'll see how it goes, but let's go through this real quick, starting with women's basketball. A huge Big Ten matchup between number 8 Ohio State and number 10 Indiana. Spencer, go.
Give me the Buckeyes. J.C. Sheldon, the senior leader of this team, and the guard presence. They've got a lot of shooters. Cody McMahon is incredible. I think the Buckeyes get it done, JP.
Indiana is a team that they're kind of having it down here based on their usual standards. I think they go on the road to Columbus and get a huge win. And then staying in that middle part of the country, the number 2 Kansas State Wildcats going on the road against number 12 Texas, trying to bounce back after a tough loss this week.
I think they do bounce back. Give me the Kansas State Wildcats, and they've just been super solid all year. I think they go in. I think they're going to be hungry for this win, and I think they get it done and move up in the Big 12, or stay atop the Big 12, excuse me.
I agree. Purple Cat all the way. Then we head out west to a huge matchup Saturday night between number 4 Stanford and number 7 UCLA, 2 of the premier programs in the Pac-12.
First off, Tara Vanderveer becoming the all-time wins leader in basketball, surpassing Mike Krzyzewski. Of course, I know him well. He's beaten my teams plenty of years. But big shout out to Herb, and I think the Cardinals get it done. If this game was at UCLA, it might be more of a conversation, but Stanford at home, that's a dangerous team. JP, your thoughts?
Absolutely. You know, UCLA, they're a team that I don't truly believe in a lot. I'm a big Stanford enjoyer, and I think they get it done. And then our last women's game in Raleigh, North Carolina, starting where we ending where we started the show. Number 5, NC State taking on number 16, Louisville.
Give me the Wolfpack. I think this team is much improved. They have a former Gamecock transfer, Sanaya Rivers, on this team, and I think the Wolfpack get it done. I mean, they also have a great home environment.
Yeah, it's a great, you know, we saw it last night against North Carolina. They were able to just ride that crowd energy to really get a huge win over a ranked team. And for that reason, I'm back in the pack in the spirit of Jim Valvano. And now we're going to head over to the men's side of things.
We sure are. Starting in the Big 12, we've got number 8 Kansas hosting number 4 Houston. JP.
You know, it's a tough matchup to pick. It's hard to pick against Kansas in Lawrence. But it's easy when you got the Houston defense to rely on. Give me the Cougars.
I think Kansas bounces back and gets another signature win on the season. They've been really good against top opponents this season. I think they get it done at Allen Fieldhouse. Moving on to, the cream of the crop, UNC
the game
Duke.
for this tie.
JP, I'll let you start on this one.
Oh, man. I hate Duke. North Carolina all the way. Tar Heels, I believe in R.J. Davis, I believe in Armando Bacot, and I believe in that home environment.
I think this is going to be an incredible matchup. My entire family, outside of my dad and my uncle, are Duke fans. So a big shout out to all of them. Give me the Tar Heels at home taking down Duke for the first time in 2 years. They didn't win last year against Duke. This is a hungry team. They want to bounce back ACC win, and I think they're going to get it done at the Dean Smith Center. Moving to the SEC, we've got number 10 Kentucky hosting number 5 Tennessee. JP.
Two teams that can't beat the South Carolina Gamecocks, and we're expected to care about them. Being serious, though, these are two of the best teams in the SEC,
Allegedly.
2 of the best teams in the country. And, you know, Dalton Connect against that Kentucky defense is an all-day, 24/7 open buffet. Give me the Volunteers.
Yeah, Connect might have 50, and Tennessee might only score 70 points in the game. Also, give me the Volunteers, though. He is a one-man army, and Kentucky could not stop me or you. Moving to the Big Ten, it's Wisconsin hosting number 2 Purdue. JP, who gets it done?
Our final game, and it's perhaps the biggest of the entire weekend. It's the Boilermakers and the number 1 player in the country going on the road to a great environment in Madison. Wisconsin, a tough loss. Teams that suffer tough losses right before a big game, they get their minds right, they get focused, they get ready to roll.
Dialed in.
I think the Badgers, they got what it takes. They're going to go out there and they're going to get it done. They're going to do it for that silly little mascot I put on that graphic.
I agree. That mascot is super silly, and that's the only reason I'm going with Wisconsin. I wish they had a little, I don't know how to make a Badger thing, or I would do it, you know. They don't have wings or something. Whatever they're going to do to that silly little Purdue train thing they've got going on, I think they will. That's going to do it for this episode of Ball Don't Lie. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and Facebook at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. For SGTV, I'm JP Barry.
And I'm Spencer Ball. From all of us here at SGTV, have a great weekend, Carolina. Forever to thee.